Jim's. Oh, and Gary's here. I'm definitely not going to be on my best behavior.
Hey, listen, I've been known to bring down the team before, so.
Michelle, I love it. You're flying the Celtics colors.
Thank you. I was kind of told I had to by my 7-year-old. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Well,
Charlie
tonight.
was like,
Yeah.
okay. Way to go, Charlie.
All right. Well, thanks and welcome everybody. We will kick it off. Leron, I didn't know, was there any product updates today from your team?
No new product features or anything else. We've released quite a few things and are now back into the development mode and working on the next few things.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let me share out my screen, and we got a really cool session today. Jim, I'll let you start off with wins of the week. Want to thank Buddy from Logically joining us. But this is going to be a all hands on deck meeting with the intent, once we get through wins of the week, to try to come up with I would say, Chip, best kind of scenarios where we could walk through if we're going to use the backdoors and breaches thematic of initial compromise, pivot and escalate, C2, and persistence. I did some recon work on MITRE and have some additional slides to share with everybody. But I think the end result could be something really cool where not only do we come up with a SaaS edition, SaaS Alerts edition of backdoors and breaches, but come up with some potentially new respond rules based on mitigation steps that we see in MITRE and in feedback from awesome folks on here like you all, and how some really mature organizations like Buddy are doing it at Logically. So Jim, with that being set the stage, let's let you kick it off and see if we have any good stuff happening in the world of the partners.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Andrew. First of all, one of the things I thought was really cool this week is Chris Collins from CBC Tech Innovations. He sent us a photo of he took the SaaSonomics course, one of the presentations I've done. He frames his certificate of completion and he put it on the wall. He took a photo and sent it to us. So that was cool. Outside of that, I know that Gary Harlem has a win of the week and would love for him to share that.
Yeah, this isn't the part of the program that I like. I'm happy to be a part of, because this is our second. Well, one was an attempt, but we have a breach confirmed last week at one of our clients, and one of our clients that should have known better. But financial firm, we got an alert Friday afternoon of forwarding rule with out of area login, which we get periodically, and confirmed that there was indeed bad behavior. Immediately locked out, changed passwords, reset all that wonderful stuff, and upon investigation found out that the actor somehow gained access 3 days earlier. So they were in the box on the 28th. This was on the 31st. Within a few minutes of the notification, an inbound message came in, and this is a financial institution. And they got an inbound message from what appeared to be their client. The threat actor registered a new domain with a similar name off by a double L instead of a single L, and asking for a wire transfer of $95,000. By the time the message came in, we were well aware of what was going on and had already remediated. Interestingly enough, this company is hosted in Azure. They have MFA on Azure, but for some reason, not on their Office 365 accounts. They do now, or actually as of 1 o'clock today. That's been in process, but the outcome of it, unfortunately, is a call to their insurance provider just to make sure, because we just don't know exactly what that person had access to. They've engaged with a forensics team to go in and look at all the logs in detail. The thing that I thought was actually kind of interesting, though, when we looked back at some of the basic stuff, the threat actor was using a VPN for most of all of the initial contact, which went below the radar, but somehow on that Friday used a foreign IP address, which triggered the rule. I'm still not sure why. Given that they knew about using VPNs, and had they not done that, we don't know that we would have been alerted to the behavior. The threat actor actually did register his own iPhone as an MFA device on the account back on the 28th. So a very near miss. It's going to cost the client $2,500 for their deductible with their insurance carrier, just for peace of mind. Because all of their data is in the Microsoft cloud, we just don't have enough assurance to tell them that data wasn't exfiltrated and or the threat actor didn't have access to PII. And basically the feeling was better safe than sorry. And they're not happy about it, but they're comfortable paying that deductible and moving on.
Gary, can I ask you a question or two?
Of course.
So first of all, it's awesome. So one of the questions you nailed for me right away was like, wait a minute, you saw the foreign IP, but it was 3 days later. My initial gut is that, threat actors mess up just like all of us, and probably maybe forgot that he was no longer in the VPN and accessed it as he was setting up this new domain. Who knows, right? But one from an account management perspective, I'm assuming they did have SaaS alerts. And with Fortify, were you recommending MFA? And if so, what was kind of the pushback? I'm just trying to get into the minds of a typical prospect or customer that, is being obtuse, if you will.
So when this client was moved to Azure 2 years ago, the engineer, who's no longer with us for lots of reasons, who did the migration, had those conversations.
Okay.
So I actually have not gone back to our VCIO to find out why it hasn't happened since. We're not sure, is the answer. I think this is one of those instances where I think we knew about it, but it fell through the cracks.
And then this is just speculation, but they're upset paying $2,500, but you kept them from potentially losing.
No. They're not. They're not thrilled about paying it from the perspective of, shit happens.
Right.
They know it could have been a whole lot worse.
Okay.
But they're not upset with us for the breach. That hasn't come back to us and pointed, well, why didn't you protect us or any of that? That's never the question. They're grateful that this is all they have to pay, but nobody likes to pay that kind of a fee. That's all.
Got it. And I guess last question is, so with SaaS alerts, you couldn't see any forwarding, like from an exfiltration side, there were no forwarding rules or anything.
No. What triggered it was the foreign login along with the forwarding rule.
Okay. You guys just don't know necessarily at this point what was forwarded out.
No, they forwarded all mail to an RSS feed.
Okay.
That which we've seen that before, but we haven't gone back and looked at all of the details of other things that may have been logged, like the extra MFA device, for example. My tech told me we do get an alert on it, but it's a low priority, so it hadn't been looked at.
Did they try and lock you guys out by invoking MFA?
I'm not sure because MFA may have been enabled but not enforced. I'm not sure why the threat actor felt obliged to set up MFA. Oh, there was one other thing though, and I'm not sure if it was on Thursday or Friday after that device was set up. The end user did get a pop-up or a notice or something about MFA that she never had seen in the past.
Yeah.
So, you know, had he not set up MFA, she probably wouldn't have gotten that message, you know, but she didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, my guess, Chip, maybe you can chime in here, Bud, but my guess is they were trying to invoke MFA to keep locked, to keep their persistence, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
So, Gary, we see this in a lot of rules that other partners create, that the introduction of a new MFA device or change in MFA settings is also considered one of the indications of a compromise.
Yep.
Particularly if there's a change in the browser, if it's not a known device. If you guys are using Unify, I don't know whether you are or not. Obviously, if there's a foreign login, many partners just use a VPN connection along with a mailbox rule creation or an MFA or both as a combined IOC. So there's definitely ways you guys can beef up the respond rules. We actually have a couple folks on this call who I think are literally experts at that. Maybe Andrew, we can get into this when we get into backdoors and breaches on how you can really customize respond rules and make them a lot more flexible to pick this kind of stuff up. Because I think you may have actually found out about this sooner rather than later. Another thing people do was they'll add in any kind of activity that looks like excessive file activity. I don't know if your team is using the file activity.
There was none at that point.
Yep.
So again, their data is not in SharePoint. Their data is in Azure files.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So they have it in storage buckets in Azure.
Yeah. So, yeah. But what I said to the client is, hey, listen, it's still one account. We don't think they had the ability to bridge that gap because it is a different login, and MFA was required to get into the Azure remote desktop.
Yep.
But I can't guarantee it at that point. But you mentioned this. So is there now a new condition in respond for VPN access? Is that what I heard you say?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Garrett, do we know, by the way, you bring up a good question about were they able to get, do we know about how they compromised it? Was it financial? Yeah. Okay.
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it was brute force or if she clicked on a link. We're not sure yet. She didn't, I haven't spoken to her directly, but she didn't remember or think that she had clicked on something. But again, without MFA, it may have been easy. And this is one, how can I put this delicate? A slightly elder person who may not have had sophisticated passwords.
Got it.
When I had that conversation with my point of contact, I said, do you think she had a strong password? Yeah, like no was, immediate no was the answer.
So Gary, the evidence of whether it's a password spray or brute force will definitely be in the SaaS Alerts event logs, in the analysis section. If you look closely at this user account, again, we could go into the details right now, Ben, or Gary, but Andrew, I actually think this is a perfect lead in to the whole discussion, because this is how you analyze this stuff and see it and figure it out.
Yeah, but ultimately, because of their notification requirements, it is. I think it's a great exercise for us to go back and look at the logs. But I didn't want to become, in this case, I didn't want to become the expert to give them the advice that they didn't need to do notification of anybody. We handed that right off to the insurance company, let their forensic experts do that. But I think we should know for having a better understanding. And I agree with you, Chip, that's a great thing to do. A good exercise for us.
By the way, I applaud your decision to not get involved at that point. The fact that they have alerted insurance, because had you stuck your yourself in that place, believe me, their breach counsel would have loved to
Oh, yeah.
asked you a bunch of questions and discovered whatever, you started to do. So I think it's a great move, Gary.
Yeah, no, right. I did not want to set that expectation. I didn't want to, it came up in conversation that they, the threat actor could have had access to things that were in her email. Their policies not to have any PII in there, but you never know. And we don't think they had access to files, but again, we don't know. And they requested access logs from Tamarack and Schwab, who are their two primary platforms, just to make sure there are no unusual IPs or activity in there as part of the initial course of action.
Oh, so they're a RIA, I'm assuming.
Okay.
They're a registered investment advisor or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So Gary, did you guys, I'm just curious if you had a look at, you mentioned remote desktop here. So did you guys have a look at the remote desktop session logs to see if there was corresponding IP address?
I can't answer the question yet. It's on our list to review. I know the forensics team will definitely be looking at that. I'm not sure if my engineers got into that level or not at that point, because we knew at that point that the insurance company was taking over. So I don't know how much more time we put into it.
So I got a question, buddy. You got a pretty large swath of IPs under you. Have you? Is this a one you've seen, and does anything stick out to you in this so far?
Seems pretty like classic to me from what I've seen over the past year and a half or so. Most likely a credential given away through a phishing type email, like put into a fake Office 365 login, and then they came right in. Could also be password spraying or brute force, but you may get more of an obvious signature of that in the logs with a bunch of failed logins and stuff.
Right. The interesting thing here, though, I don't think these users log into the Office portal very often.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's likely, because typically, especially this users are very simple users. They log in with the remote desktop agent and into Azure, and that everything's already in there. They very rarely have to go into Office.
Yeah, what happens a lot is they'll get an email with a link in it that'll take them to a fake login page.
Maybe. Yep.
Give up their creds that way, and then that's how the threat actors identify.
Right. Like you haven't logged in, you haven't authenticated in a while, right, buddy? For a novice user, we need you to authenticate, whatever.
Yeah, she didn't remember any of that, but who knows? Anything's possible.
Yeah, occasionally we've gone through inboxes, if the client wants us to, and we'll go through the user's inbox and find the actual phishing email. That it might be, it'd be pretty obvious probably to your engineer, or if you have a security operations center, they'll probably be able to take it out. But yeah, to a lot of users, it's not obvious.
Don't forget that the memory is often clouded by the fact that the fake login page looks so real that they wouldn't remember it. Like if you ask the question, do you remember being prompted to log into Microsoft, or any other site? And the reaction is if you use the terms anything that looked off or funny, they're not going to remember it, because this stuff is so convincing. They're going to think it's part of their routine day. So if they were asked to log in and enter their credentials spontaneously at all, no matter how it looked,
right?
That's kind of the way to counsel them into it.
I could remember a case that we worked where, we had the time and everything that the logins occurred and the credentials were stolen. And the guy was adamant that he didn't do it. And he swore, I was working with Bob on these contracts at that time. We're like, let's see the contracts. Sure enough, those were the phishing email. They couldn't, he couldn't get the PDF to open. That was the phishing email. So, in his mind, he did nothing wrong. He was, doing all legitimate work, but that's the way.
I think one of the takeaways, Gary, for you on this one is definitely revise those respond rules.
Yeah.
So you can capture those VPNs.
Flag VPNs for sure.
Yeah. Have you guys updated like best practice documents with some of that stuff?
Yes.
We'll go looking for them. If not, we'll reach out.
Yeah.
Gary, so in the category of win of the week, is your customer crediting your team with identifying this compromise?
Oh, I think 100%. Yeah, I think they're grateful that we contained it very quickly. You know, we were on it, and coincidentally, I still get the text messages of some of the highest level alerts, and the rest just go to our service board. So I saw the text message come in. I happened to see the responsible tech walk by, said, take a look real quickly. And 3 minutes later, he was on the phone with the end user. 5 minutes later, that first email came in. So we were on it before that, before that email even hit our inbox.
That's
And I
great.
think they were appreciative of that for sure.
Chip, Monday morning quarterback here, they use a VPN, so IP is, let's just say, done correctly from a threat actor perspective, and they're local, and they never came in through that, foreign log IP. Anything they could have done differently in respond rules that would have helped this?
Yeah, you can set up a respond rule to simply flag something if it's a VPN as one of the conditions, plus any secondary actions. And you can get super granular. Let's say you have a customer that's like, well, we want to use a VPN. We're paranoid. We want everybody coming into the VPN. Okay, create the respond rule that says, unless the connection is coming from this VPN, flag it, like this specific one. So, you can get super granular with those rules and the conditions with both and or statements in the filters. Like, you can really build complex logic that can narrow down what the acceptable behavior is, and also give you a pretty wide fishing net, or I didn't mean that as an intentional pun, by the way, a pretty wide net of observing behavior that is outside the pattern that you expect or want to see. So, one of the reasons that, we asked Buddy specifically to come on this call, Andrew, for this whole discussion around backdoors and breaches is because, we've seen by example, I'll give away a little secret here, guys. We know every single rule that you guys create in the back end because we can obviously see the definition of it. And some of our partners have gotten really, really sophisticated, like way beyond what we've done with our templates. We've kept the templates relatively simple, as you should, right? They're there to help prompt people to think about, okay, what does a compromise look like to me, and my customers? And there's individual context to that for every single partner. But people have come up with some really, really creative and complex elements. And the end result of that is you wind up with a system that is so finely tuned that you have almost no noise. And when something hits, your inbox or your PSA, it's spot on. And that's really that highest and best use of how the platform is being used today by our top partners. So we'll definitely dig into this, I think, as we go through the call here. I mean, hopefully we'll get there, Andrew. It won't be like last week. We're gonna maybe, actually, I hope there's 3 more wins of the week.
I was gonna say, let's see if there's any other
for another week. But
yeah,
it's a great example. And Gary, thanks for sharing that. And of course, if there's anything that our team can help your team do on a forensic analysis as a backflush, just let us know.
No, I appreciate it. Like, I wonder if it would be worth setting up a call using this as a learning experience to really see what is in there. I know the system at a high enough level. My guys are the ones who are in it at a lower level, but I don't know if we have enough insight to dig into the level that you've identified as available.
Yep.
So that might be a great learning experience and exercise because we've got real data here to go look for.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. This is so ironic because on our support team call today, which I still do almost every day, we had this exact scenario, and it was a fairly new partner that reached out to our support team and said, hey, I've got this mailbox rule creation that came up as a medium alert. These guys aren't even using Respond yet. And the question that they asked is, what does this mean? And should I be worried about it? Well, my initial reaction is, of course you should be worried about it. So I kind of quizzed our team and we use this as an exercise to walk through. Okay, guys, knowing what the partners have in hand and knowing what we have in hand, how would you recommend the partner look at this? And the response is go into our analyze segment and look for some specific patterns of behavior before that took place. And we obviously can go back and look in our data structure. If we don't have what we call a support account to the client, we can look directly in the data structure and see what goes on with this particular account that leads up to this moment. You know, and I can't stress this enough. I always take this opportunity, these kinds of opportunities to restate it. Not SaaS Alerts, not Microsoft, not, you know, your firewall company. There is no one who can instantly state the compromise happened at this moment for sure, because the compromise itself has some special signature. The compromise event, and I know Buddy would back me up on this and others who've been through it, looks like a login, a regular login. It has some distinguishing characteristics sometimes, like it's often a non-interactive sign-in, but it's the stuff that leads up to it. And then the first two or three things that happen right afterward, it's that combination of things that tells you this is a compromised account. So, you know, I'd love to actually, you know, connect up if your team wants to. Maybe we'll get a couple of the guys from our support team to go through that and show you guys how exactly this is done. And then I also know we have some KBs out there on it too.
No, how do we go about setting that up? Who should I reach out to?
Why don't you reach out to reach out to me directly, Gary. That's fine. Either me or your account manager, either way, it's going to wind up in the same place.
Okay. Thank you.
I can throw one other data point out there that helps us a lot in evaluating, and that's the user agent that shows up on the login. So it'll capture the user agent. And if you see the user agent, like this person always uses a Windows machine, and then you see a new IP address or a VPN and it's a Mac OS, or if it's a session token theft, a lot of times you'll see like a Python agent or something show up. That's a clear indicator that something's changed. You know, this person's never used a Mac. Go look at the last 3 months of history, and all of a sudden they're logging in with a Mac instead of a PC. And the IP or VPN or some other piece of data, you could say that's probably a real compromise.
Yeah, and for everyone who might not know what user agent is, if you look in the description on events, it will say user agent, but what it really is describing is the application that was used to make the connection. It's usually a browser when people are logging into 365 online. It can be an actual product. It could literally be Excel is the user agent, or Outlook .exe is the user agent. Then you know you have a local application using it. It can get confusing because sometimes Microsoft doesn't really know. For a lot of Apple stuff, they don't know. So they'll say, you know, it looks like Apple WebKit, Safari, Chrome. They basically throw everything at it and say, could be any one of these. We're not really sure. But he's right. You know, if you have a consistent pattern where you know your customer is using all Windows machines, you can actually set your respond rule up to say, if it's not, you know, Internet Explorer, you know, NT40 Internet Explorer, which, believe it or not, Microsoft still describes that as NT40. If it's not that, if it's any other agent, then flag it. You know, you can go that far.
So I actually just pulled up her logs. So on the 28th, you know, 8 o'clock, I'm seeing her Azure Virtual Desktop browser, Chromium browser, Chrome. A couple of events later, an hour later, OAuth used from foreign application, Office Home. Now, this is a Los Angeles IP address, which is, I do believe, the threat actor, because hers is both in Warwick and in Washington, which is the Microsoft data center that we've looked up in the past. But in the middle, there are these other random IPs in Phoenix, Arizona, that I'm clearly seeing authentication.
If you click on those IPs, does it show that it's VPN on the Arizona one in the Los Angeles?
Known VPN says false. Known abuser is true. Known attacker is true. Known threat is true. Everything else is false.
Buddy,
That's
I'm
been
wondering,
reported for abuse in the past. Yeah.
though, with Phoenix, the fact that they spun up a website, if it was like he was using GoDaddy right out of and coming through that way, possibly being Because that's what you said, right, Gary? They spun up a website.
Well, they spun up a domain for the email to send an email that looked like it was coming from their client, off by a letter. But at this point, they're just gaining access as far as we know. So they
Okay.
weren't that far in yet.
Oh, okay.
The domain is for easier impersonation
Right.
for the funds redirection. So that way they're not in the environment doing it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it looks like they're bouncing around because I'm seeing some other ones from New Jersey, but a lot of this from Phoenix.
But the partner that was the other party that was involved, not your client, but the other party. I'm sorry, the domain impersonation was for your client, right?
No, well, it wasn't my client's domain. It was one of their
One of their partners.
clients' domain users
Yeah.
domain
Gotcha.
for an
Okay.
inbound request for them to wire money from their account.
Yeah,
Got
by
it.
the way, as in the last 3 weeks of us talking about this, that client was hacked first.
Yeah.
And
I know that the other client was hacked. I think.
oh, they were, absolutely. We can guarantee you that they were. The fact that the attacker was smart enough to take their customer's domain or their other party's domain, spoof it with an extra L in the domain name, and then send information from that, you can be guaranteed that party was hacked.
I assumed that reading through her emails, they found somebody with an active account and, engineered it that way based on her inbox.
Maybe they would have been in there longer than 3 days probably to pull that off, though.
Maybe we didn't see anything prior to the 28th, but maybe it's possible.
All right, let's keep this one on pause because we'll come back to it. Jim, do we have any others?
I don't know.
I got
Yeah,
one.
Okay.
I got
let's
a
hear it.
good one. So real quick, last Thursday, I believe, another law firm, one of our clients, he was out on the golf course as lawyers do at like 5:30, and he got an email from actually another former client of ours who's a law firm. They went to another MSP, so that was a hacked account that sent my guy an email, clicked on the link on his phone, entered his creds, and didn't think about it again because it failed. The sign-in was from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I was checking the SaaS logs, and the threat score I think was like a 96, and the trust score was like a 90, something like that. Not a known VPN, but basically they had access to his account for about 20 hours, and then the next day, same kind of situation as Gary. We got a alert for France sign in on the guy's account. Probably him just being lazy at home or something like that. But we're able to lock out his account, reset his creds, everything like that. Monitored for 48 hours. They kept trying from Jersey, New York, Connecticut again, but they didn't get back in. There wasn't anything in the logs, nothing that I could see for data exfil or anything. They probably just got whatever info they could find in his emails. But luckily, we got that alert, and we wouldn't have been able to secure his account. He'd still be hacked if it wasn't for you guys. So big win. He is very appreciative of us. So definitely win for the week. So thank you guys.
Thank you, David, for sharing. That's awesome.
David,
Great stuff.
did he have MFA? Is that what the authentication?
He sure did. Sure did. We have MFA geofence policies. Obviously MFA just bypassed with his login and token theft. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just unfortunate, but at least we caught it and there was no visible damage, and the client's grateful. That's the good news.
I predict you're going to pick up more law firms in your relative region, David.
Yeah.
How many what?
More law firms.
Yeah, I bet you could.
Yeah.
He's talking to his colleagues.
Yep, exactly.
It's amazing how many stories we're getting right now about law firms getting breached.
I mean, it's money.
Yep.
It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do? Have SaaS alerts and cover your SaaS, I guess.
There you go, David. Love it.
Awesome, guys. Thanks.
Thanks
Got
for
it.
sharing. Who else?
Jeff? It looks like Jeff is commenting on something.
Hey, Chip, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I'm going back to these logs and I don't see anything past the 28th, but I'm just watching through the first login, but the first authentication success, the result details is first factor requirements satisfied by claim in the token.
Yep. So that's when you have a token stored on your browser.
Yeah.
Like when you log into 365 for your personal account and you do it in a browser and you open up your browser the next day, even after closing the browser, and you just hit, admin.office.com if you're going to the admin console, or you hit office.com and you just pop right in there, that's the token that's stored as a cookie in your browser. And the claim in the token is that, hey, we've already been through the whole MFA session. That's, part of what's contained in this big, long, jumbled string of stuff that is the token itself. And, the fact that you've been through all three tiers, username, password, MFA being satisfied, is in the token. So Microsoft says, all right, claim is satisfied. We know we need MFA on this one, but it's already been done, so we're going to let you in.
So the first login was at 12:29 p.m. This one's at 2:20. So that means they'd already logged in a few hours earlier. It's not that they stole the token. They created their own token with the successful login.
It sounds, based upon what you said earlier, that there was no MFA.
Right.
And now this is saying that the MFA is satisfied by the claim in the token. Didn't you also say that this guy set up MFA and added a device?
Sometime thereafter. I don't, it was on that day, but I don't think it was at that point yet. The first login I'm seeing from Firefox was at 12:20.
There's your agent, the buddy's comment.
Because they don't normally use Firefox, right, Chip?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the agent change. Firefox is the agent. That goes right to Buddy's comment about how, that's important.
Which this goes to, Chip, what we talked a lot about, like a browser security. Oh, we only use Chrome, right? This is the way you can put, as Buddy was saying too, and basically a zero trust rule around what, only this type of browser. And I'm air quoting zero trust, but awesome. Did Jeff have something to share?
Jeff was posting something about a couple of incidents, but I don't know if he's
You have microphone, Jeff?
willing to share.
See, he's muted, but mic isn't working. Okay. All right. Any others? Well, Jim, what's cool, air quoting cool, what's cool is the amount of wins, but the sharing of what's going on and kind of walking through the TTPs of these guys. So
Exactly. Even if we get 3 or 4 wins of the week, we're sharing, everyone's learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's key.
So Chip, as you were saying, this kind of leads us into backdoors and breaches. And if for those that, I'll just again quick, this is from Black Hills Information Security. They make it open to anybody. There's an online version. I'll put those in the URLs momentarily in chat. Maybe I'll let Chip and Buddy talk a little bit, but I did want to set the stage with a few things. Basically, this is if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, Black Hills took that concept of a role-playing game and turned cyber incidences into a similar concept of a quote unquote dungeon master, or in this case, somebody that's playing the role of the for lack of a better, incident master. So what I did, Chip, to kind of let us kick in some ways that we could come up with as many different compromises as I did some research and came up with the top 10 initial tactics that we're seeing today in terms of how M365 is compromised. Love some comments on this. I'll show 2 more slides and then I'll turn it over to you. But it was interesting because password spraying, brute force, all the, several of these have already been mentioned today, right? In terms of how that compromise may have occurred, right? Earlier in Gary's call, Gary's comments.
Happy to share anytime.
Yeah, it was awesome. What's interesting is MITRE does a really good job of I'll bring up the whole thing because it actually gets cut off. You have to slide across. There's some other pieces to the right here, but MITRE does a really good job of outlining the different types of M365 attacks. And then what I really like about them, which I think gets into, Chip, what we're talking about here, is the sub techniques of what happens, that a lot of what SaaS Alerts is picking up on in terms of what the threat actor is doing and what you guys are reporting on. So I don't know if you've seen this before or not.
I have. I can barely see it on your screen, I have to say.
Sorry. Is this better, guys and gals?
Let me close. Yeah, it helps for me to close down the chat window and all the other stuff. Okay, yeah, I can see this well.
Okay. So it's just interesting. Like if we just take Gary's, right? Again, we don't know 100%, but let's just assume it was some type of phishing, as Buddy was indicating. And obviously they were able to get in. One of the things that we know they tried to do, right, was right here, right, Chip? They tried to come in and modify MFA in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting to see that this can all be very well mapped out. And the idea I had, again, was to go through, what are the top tactics that are being used? What are the sub techniques that are used? And then correspondingly, so how is the threat actor moving along, right, in the kill chain, as it were, if we use Lockheed Martin's terms? And then what can SaaS Alerts be doing so that maybe eventually we come up with a great looking deck of our own, but at the same time we would build a matrix of the type of attack, things that they're doing in sub techniques, and then rules that people could be, basically a matrix that people could go look at for SaaS Alerts and set up everything. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's the right approach for us to sort of model out what would be a SaaS Alerts edition of backdoors and breaches. There's definitely differences that we see in real world use versus the MITRE framework. Things that are included there that I think you never see in a pure SaaS environment versus a cloud environment. There's some things that you almost always see that we would want to focus on. I mean, looking at your table here, Andrew, absolutely, phishing or OAuth consent phishing, those two are at the absolute top of the list in terms of the methodology that's being used to successfully exploit people. We do see a ton of evidence of both password spray and brute force attack and credential stuffing, but we don't see that those succeed very often. I think Gary might have brought one to the table today based upon the fact that his user did not have MFA, so it's plausible that they could have been caught up in a brute force or a password spray attack, especially as he stated that probably not a very sophisticated password. In the end, all of that leads either to just someone having the credentials and logging in and creating their own access token as a result of it, or the token theft component we talked about when there is MFA involved that has to be bypassed as well. So, I think this first column lays out quite well, what happens. Buddy, I'd love for you to chime in on the next column to the right on pivot and escalate, because I think this is a really important piece I'd love to hear somebody else describe this and see if it winds up being the same things that come to my mind at, sort of at the top of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And Buddy, have you played backdoors and breaches before? It doesn't, we're creating our own here, but have you seen the genre of how this goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, once we see them get access, I think their primary goal is obviously going to be to monetize that access. And I think the easiest way is for the funds redirection. So, they're going to try to step into conversations where they identify an upcoming transaction. So they're going to search for specifically that in the inbox once they're in there. Try to redirect that message. But if they can't find, or that user doesn't participate in financial transactions, the next thing that they're going to want to do is get to someone who does. So they'll use that access to gain intelligence on the rest of the organization. That may be through phishing from that account now, because now they could send phishing emails to their phishing links from within that account. Others in that organization, there may not be the same level of filtering, and there'll be a higher level of trust on an internal type of email. So they might be able to move laterally to other accounts that way. In one case that I responded to, there was an access to a document in SharePoint that had ACH account numbers, like vendor payment account numbers for the company. So, and we saw the threat actor opened it and modified it. So one of the things that we were concerned with in that scenario was that they modified ACH numbers within there, so that when the next time a payment was being set up, it would be directed to an account in the threat actor's control. As it turned out, there was no actual modifications. It was just that they accessed the document, and we just used SharePoint versioning to figure that out. But SaaS Alerts drew us to every activity that threat actor had taken during their period of access, from the duration when they got in to the duration we kicked them out. It was only about 90 minutes in that case. It was like a Saturday morning.
But can we rewind for a second? Because
Sure.
Bo Bullock talks a lot about this, if you know Bo at all from Black Hills. He talks about, and you guys know about this, is that, how M365, it's not just access to email, but as you just pointed out, SharePoint. Can you talk about, how you've seen threat actors then try to pivot out of, hey, I'm in the inbox right now, I'm going to start to try to get to whether it's Excel or SharePoint or OneDrive or other teams, or have you seen log or lateral movement in those fashions? And if so, what do you typically see?
Not a lot. So I would say it's rare. What I've typically seen, because I think when they log in, they land on like the office.com homepage for the most part.
Right.
So it's usually the recently used documents, like whatever the user was in, in the previous couple of days. If it's tempting, that kind of draws their attention.
But it's way more about the BEC and trying to find users that have financial interest within the org than it is about getting into other various aspects of Office.
Yeah, so that's the other place and we actually have a respond rule that triggers this, is if and Jake, I know Jake is on the call. It's account controls 2, I think is what the page is called.
Buddy, which role are you looking for?
It's the one where you can look up everyone's role in the organization. What's that page called?
I think it's just the Azure portal.
Yeah, maybe it's Azure portal. You're right, it is. It's just Azure portal. But like if you go to office.com and go to your account, you can look up the rest of the directory. So you get all the names and roles of all the other individuals, and that will inform the threat actors on who to go after within the org. So, if they land on the receptionist computer and they need to get to the accounts payable people or the accounts receivable, this will tell them exactly who that is if they haven't figured it out.
You bring up a good point too. Any standard user in your organization can go to portal.azure.com, unless it's been specifically blocked, and look at who's who in the company, who holds administrative roles in the tenant, who they might want to fish against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, Jake, about that, because that's one of the things that Bo talks a lot about. He's like the first thing I'll do when I'm doing a red team or a pen testing exercise, he goes, I'll immediately go and, like he calls it, I'll dump the directory. Like he immediately wants to find everybody in the company.
Yeah, the classic term is directory harvest attack, which used to be executed. The term comes from the days when everybody had AD controllers in their office, and there were backdoors straight into those AD controllers, and you were dumping AD to look at everybody's account permissions.
Speaking of that, so Jake and or Buddy, do you guys block that, from your non-admin users that access to that portal.azure directory?
When I see it, I'll talk to the client about it and see if they want it blocked, but not by default, no, because what we've noticed is that there are times where they want to have that access and be able to see those user trees and stuff like that, even regular users. So something we bring up.
What's that?
It's something we bring up, but not something we do by default.
Got it. Interesting. Do you guys, but will you see a lot of that movement right to this initially in the logs, or do they not? What do you typically see?
It seems to be it's a mix. There's a couple of attack paths, or it's not going to say attack paths, but a couple of pivot points they can go down. The first one being is at portal.azure.com. The second one being is that if you look through the unified audit log, you can see them. If they have an E5 license on the account, you can see what people are searching for inside the inbox. Usually it's payroll or invoice.
Right.
They're trying to grab some type, like Buddy alluded to, financial information, stuff like that. And they also rarely do try to search SharePoint as well, just stuff like invoice, payroll, accounts receivable, something they can get out of the mailbox. Something I have seen as well is that they will use the mailbox they just compromised, even if it's not directly tied to some type of financial person in the company. If it's like an account manager mailbox they take over or breach, they'll try to send out phishing emails to contacts that may have financial, I guess, power at another company. So think account managers, accounting people, and that's kind of their pivot point, the pivot to maybe possibly another organization using yours as a hopping point. Not directly tied to this company, but same idea.
Got it. Say queries about, hey, we're considering changing our ACH, or hey, did you pay this most recent bill, or whatever the emails that they just got. They'll start a string based on something that would be reasonable for the other entity to consider as real.
Yeah, or even try to fish the other entity to get access into their mailbox.
Got it.
That's the cycle, Andrew, that I always talk about in terms of what BECs and account compromises really are. It's a never-ending cycle that you're trying to identify your next target before you get caught, while you're also trying to execute your financial fraud. Those are kind of parallel paths that the attacker is pursuing at the exact same time.
Exactly. Let's try to cause havoc inside the organization by getting funds redirected. At the same time, let's try to find our next target as well outside the organization.
Got it. Awesome.
And one other one that we saw, they got like a aged accounts receivable report, right? And then they had access to the invoice and templates, that like a sample invoice. So now they knew like what clients owed them money and how to get a hold of them, what their email addresses. So they made fake templates with the real debt that was owed, but their account information to pay it to, and then invoice the customers of that organization for legitimate debts that they knew they owed, but now they're paying the threat actor as opposed to the company. So there's a lot of different ways that they can monetize it. Like once they're in, they're extremely creative.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
In that case, it actually wasn't a compromise. It was a domain impersonation. So they impersonated the domain, impersonated someone inside, and then they asked for an aged accounts receivable report. The AR person replied back with it, and they said, "Oh, can you send me all the contact information?" And then they oh, sure, here's all the contact information for these accounts. And they were off and running.
Wow.
So they never actually gained access to an account illicitly, Buddy, in that case. That was a real social engineering spear phishing attack on a person that was going to respond according to their job role and provide the information.
Yep. In one case, that's exactly it. The other one was a fake QuickBooks support. And both of them carried out the same tactic though. So the fake QuickBooks support, they got the AR person let them into the computer. So they were in the computer for a little bit.
This
Wow.
one is very similar to, in essence, Buddy, all on obviously a smaller scale, the MGM, right? Like a help desk impersonation.
Yep.
That was allowed to come in and start messing around.
Yeah, I can say the QuickBooks one threw me off because normally the classic QuickBooks scam is, you're hi, I'm from QuickBooks. I'm going to fix your QuickBooks. Okay, give us a credit card. We'll pay you. This was the first time I saw them actually trade data out of the QuickBooks system, the accounts receivable, in order to then bill the clients illegitimately. So that was their goal there. So normally the classic one is just, hey, give us your credit card. We want to get $200. This time they were going for all the company's accounts receivable.
Interesting. Instead of, hey, we fixed it, you owe us X money.
Yeah.
Really,
Have a
really.
good week. I got to jump for another call.
Thanks, Gary.
All right, thanks for everything.
Andrew, I think we're coming about to the top of the hour.
Are.
We're gonna have to continue the exercise over time.
This is really good. Really, really good. Buddy Jake, really appreciate your insights as always. By the way, Buddy, can I shoot you an email on something that I thought you might find interesting?
Of course, yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I know we're right at the top of the hour. Jim, Chip, any closing comments or thoughts for the group before we sign off?
Yeah, just one other thing I was hoping to get to this week, which I guess we're going to need to push off to next week, and that's focusing on our Google friends. I see Chad; he's right in the middle of my screen. As I think everyone knows, we lit up Respond for Google Workspace earlier this week, and we've already seen a lot of alerts. In one particular instance, hundreds and hundreds for one tenant. Now that was an EDU tenant. And what it was alerting on, I think, was some sign-in problems that look like student accounts were having. So there'll probably some corrective action there. But maybe next week we can get into that topic because I'm going to be very curious as to see what that looks like. We have seen. Jim asked me last night, what's the Respond for Google look like? Are we seeing any activity? And the answer is, yeah, our graph of Respond activity just went like that. So I want to chat a little about it maybe next week, and we'll see what's going on with it.
Yeah, that was good. I know you guys did a great job on the whole Google release and or Gmail release. So yeah, it'd be good. By the way, did you start messing around with that, Chad?
I looked at it last week and it wasn't available in my tenant, but you guys have reminded me, so I'm actually logging in right now to take a look, and I'll turn it on.
Got it. All right. Well, again, thanks for everybody jumping on in here today. Again, Buddy, Jake, really appreciate you guys for your insights, and Chip will definitely revisit this.
Yeah, absolutely. We come to CNC and Exfil next. So let's see what kind of things we can pull out of that.
All right. Sounds great. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys. See you on Discord. Go Boston.